like to welcome back partner at Machine and Partners, Edmundo Ortega. And then joining Edmundo is Brian Northern, the Group CIO of Fulton Hogan, Dave Scullin, the Chief Digital Officer at Zespri, and Sarah Carney, the Australia NZ CTO at Microsoft. So please give them all a warm welcome. And of course, a reminder again that you are more than welcome to join this discussion. This is not just exclusive to us five. You're welcome to join it by putting your questions in via the app, and I'll include as many of them as I can. So, I think maybe if we start with Dave, because I know at Zespri that you're in the midst of a multi-year digital strategy, and there's a lot that's been done already and a lot still to come. Can you give us an idea of what you've done so far and to what result?
Sure. Like a lot of organisations, I guess we have not invested progressively as we should have, and we've sweated our IT assets somewhat. So we were sitting on a very old ERP, heavily customised, can't be upgraded, and constraining our ability to grow as a business. And we're really lucky in that we are growing 10% year on year on average. The demand for our lovely, healthy, nutritious fruit is very high and exceeds supply, so we want to keep fueling that demand efficiently. So we've invested now for 4 years in a transformation program to migrate away from that set of legacy applications to a new standardised ERP. To de-risk because of that legacy technology, obviously, to help us scale for growth, but also to get efficiencies in our business, and also position ourselves well for this AI era. We want to be able to leverage off-the-shelf AI. In our case, we're deploying an SAP ERP globally.
Just help me out, maybe others, but primarily just me, with some of the acronyms, the ERP.
Oh, sorry, so Enterprise Resource Planning. So
yes.
Systems that run your business effectively, your supply chain, your finance systems, your planning systems. We're replacing all of those. So we're halfway through that. We've done all our offshore locations, so 51 countries around the world. They're all on our new ERP, so the moment our fruit goes into a container or onto a ship in New Zealand or in the Northern Hemisphere, it goes into that new system and is managed right through to the time we get cash in from our customers.
And so what is it assisting or accelerating or improving? Is it about the traceability? Is it about the quality of the fruit? Is it all of those things?
Yeah, ultimately, yes, because we've got to do all our onshore supply chain, but yes, track and trace, critical. Quality management, critical. Inventory management, it's really important. We're fresh fruit. We've got to manage that fruit right through the supply chain so that it gets from New Zealand to the consumer in perfect shape, size, colour, profile, taste, that the consumer wants to pay a premium for. So we've got to manage that fruit and ripen it and manage all the quality right through the supply chain. So yeah, very, very important. Obviously, getting your fruit from the bottom of the earth, where New Zealand is, to the Northern Hemisphere predominantly, is also a big exercise in logistics, so you need systems to support the movement of all that fruit also. And then you've got to be able to manage your business from a financial perspective and a management accounting perspective, cash flow forecasting perspective, so it's all those things, really.
My first thought was that you were going to tell me about the robots in the pack house, or is that old hat now?
That's old hat. Yeah, look, I mean, yes, we have robots in pack houses, grading machines and so on. There's more automation that could come. At the moment, it's not cost effective to automate everything. But yes, the industry, we're not strictly, pack houses are not part of Zespri. Zespri is the sales and marketing arm of those pack houses, and they're independent. We work collaboratively as an industry, but yes, we're trying to invest and automate as much as we can. No, this is more about your data and your business processes and making sure that you're as cost effective and efficient as possible, whilst being able to scale for the future growth that we've got ahead of us without having to add lots and lots of people every year as we increase the volumes of fruit.
There's lots more that I would like to ask you, but just perhaps before we move on, you mentioned right at the beginning that you're growing 10% year on year. Is that the bit that enables the innovation, or is it the innovation that's enabled the 10% year-on-year growth? Because if we're talking about disruption, but also cost saving and profitability, is it a chicken egg?
I guess the two flow off each other. It's both. Certainly, it helps to be able to innovate and invest if you're growing, but you still have to do that in an affordability envelope, like any business. And then you would hope that that innovation drives more cost effectiveness and efficiency through that investment, obviously. So, Ed talked about in his session, return on investment. There's got to be something, and it doesn't have to be, necessarily direct to bottom line savings. It can be fueling your future growth, scaling more efficiently. We're going to add, 80% less people to our business next year for the increased volumes that we normally would every year, for instance, because of the efficiencies we're already getting out of our investments in technology.
That's really interesting. Brian, can I bring you in here? What does investment in tech and AI look like for Fulton Hogan at the moment?
Yeah, so we're probably not as, sexy as a Zespri with fruit, but we basically, our business model is road construction and road maintenance. And for us, though, we're seeing a lot more tech being involved in our kind of industry. And we'll probably give you a use example. We partnered with the Spark Group probably a couple of years ago now, and we put cameras on vehicles. So they drive down the road, take video footage of the road. We bring that back up to a model that we've trained in the cloud that determines the road conditioning. So cracking, flushing, potholes, Sev 1, Sev 4. So it was and it's interesting because there was an innovation we looked at, we put into our tenders as a kind of a point of difference to say, we're doing things a bit differently and innovative. What that does is it also drives cost efficiencies as well. So previous to that, we would have to close the road down. We'd have to put some temporary traffic management in. We'd have to have some staff to go and survey the road. So now we're removing all that. It's better for the public as well. Sorry, there's still road cones out there, so if you're travelling to work, we haven't got rid of all of the road cones, but we've got rid of some of them, so hopefully this summer will be a bit better for you. But it's interesting because that innovation drives efficiencies, and we're growing as an organisation as well across Australia and New Zealand to operate in both countries. So we use that. We've also, we adopted our own sort of chat GPT, we're calling it Blue GPT. And efficiencies around that. We've got a number of data, and for those, one of the things we've found with that is we've put a training module in. So in order to be able to use it, you've got to do some training. It's pretty basic, but it basically says these are the things to look out for, hallucination, etc. So you go through and then you have access to it on the back of our cybersecurity training, which means if you don't do that, you get reduced ability to perform your job. So we do that, and we've also, I guess the other thing we do is we're starting to look at some of our data sets that are good, and it's interesting hearing what Ed said before. We've started on a data set around tenders that we've got some AI capability over that will start the first tranche of writing or responding to a tender received from either NZTA or Vic Roads, and using that as a blue point. So we kind of innovate, but the question around innovation and cost efficiencies actually kind of feed off each other. Exactly what David was saying. It's you innovate, but you actually receive those cost efficiencies. Bear in mind that it's got to have a return on investment as well. So kind of, I guess, like every other organisation, you've got to have that control to say, I'm going to spend $10, I'm going to save $4 a year, so it's got to last for 3 years. So there's still that kind of financial acumen around it. So it's kind of what we're doing.
And in the nature of your business, is it just about cost efficiencies, or is AI also able to be harnessed for improving safety, which is a huge part of your industry?
Yeah, very, very good question. Not on the list, but I'll answer it anyway. So yeah, what's really important to us is obviously health and safety, because we work in an environment where there's a lot of hazards, particularly around some of asphalt plants, live traffic. So using that to improve safety is paramount. So and there's a direct correlation between the safety of an organisation and the profitability. So if you have a good safety record, you have a good profitability correlation. So that helps. Efficiencies is obviously one. So, we're trying to digitally optimize a number of our processes. But actually now we're seeing from our clients more and more non-financial attributes coming through in the tenders. So, NZTA being one of our major clients are looking for innovations and, technologies. So it's a bit about cost efficiencies, but there's also the innovation requirement. Used to be more about cost, but now that balance is changing a bit. So absolutely, health and safety, innovation and cost efficiency are probably the three drivers when we look at from a technology or AI component.
And Sarah, if companies come at this solely from a cost-saving perspective, are they missing a trick? That they could be achieving more, doing more, rather than just it all costing less?
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen that. That was the first wave. Everyone was like, how do we reduce costs? How do we optimize? But what we've actually seen over the last perhaps 18 months now is this incredible uptick in other parts of the business. There are these sort of unexpected benefits of AI that we're starting to see, and I think that's what you're overlooking. And those things include staff retention. We're all facing into challenges getting all the people we need in our businesses. We cannot employ all the people we need in any industry. And so how do you retain the staff you already have? And this is what we're finding AI is actually bringing, is staff retention. Mental health benefits. There's some amazing stats coming out around how people feel coming to work now because they feel more prepared. Or particularly for frontline workers, let's face it, no one ever calls the contact centre to say something nice. We all call to complain, and that's really challenging for people who are on the front line. And actually being able to solve those challenges faster through the use of AI augmentation is really powerful. So we're seeing this huge uptick in mental health as well. And so there are a lot of these peripheral and additional benefits, not just let's make more money or do things faster.
That's really interesting, because you would assume that for some, the idea of having to get their head around yet another technological change would actually be really stressful. But if it's helping them feel more prepared, it's having the opposite effect.
Yeah, look, and I loved Ed was talking about making sure people have skills and training and things in his presentation. And I think that's the critical piece, is there cannot be enough education for everyone within an organisation or across the entire country. I feel like everyone should be able to speak AI. But that helps unlock it for them. It actually helps them to step in and see those benefits more effectively.
One of the really interesting things I thought that Ed said in his presentation just before the break was about give all the staff, once you've got a strategy and done some training, give them all access to ChatGPT. I took a look at the Microsoft report that was out recently that shows that actually our workers are really keen to adopt tools like ChatGPT. It's that there isn't the custom AI being done at an organisational level. So does that show that there's real appetite from our workers to hey, this stuff's there, it's cool, let's use it?
Huge. And I love the New Zealand stats specifically, because we always get these wonderful global stats. 75% of people are using AI at work. In New Zealand, it's 84%. You are the third biggest adopters in the world. You love AI here in New Zealand. So I love that. The challenge is that either organisations haven't deployed a system. We were talking a lot out the back about people locking down the use of ChatGPT and systems like that. So either an organisation hasn't deployed a system, or they haven't deployed the right system. So the terrifying figure you should all be sitting there worrying about is the fact that 70% or 74% of people are bringing their own AI to work. So it means that they are sitting there with their own little shadow IT, and every time I say this stat at a conference, people come up to me afterwards like, yeah, I do that. I'm like, this is not a confessional, don't tell me. I don't want to know. But that's what they're doing, is they come to work, and if they're not being given the tools in the workplace, they are sitting there
finding themselves.
That's right, they're sending emails to their personal email addresses and using their own laptops or iPads or phones to use that technology. But there's dual reasons for it. And part of it, I think Ed touched on, is this cognitive dissonance that's emerging as well, which is we love AI and I want to use it, but I'm really scared that if I'm great at using it, I might lose my job. If my boss knows that I'm using it, it might be considered cheating. And so there's this dualism to it, which is we as humans want to use it. We can see how it helps us, but there also is this fear piece that creeps into it.
So we want it to be our dirty little secret that makes us look more productive and like we're great at our jobs, but we don't want to disclose that we're using it, because then they'll know that actually AI is doing part of our work for us.
Yeah, but the way you deal with that, and this is what the team's been talking about, is leadership, great leadership, talking about it openly, like explaining why we've brought it in and why are we using it and where are we putting it, gives people that comfort, and it stops being the dirty little shadow IT secret that you're bringing with you.
Brian and Dave, are there policies that stop people in your workplace doing the, not just, I guess you've got the BYO device, but this is the BYO AI. Do they just have to use the company-approved logins, or are you aware of people in your organisation just doing it in the background anyway?
Yeah, I might have to go into the confessional.
So you do it.
Yeah. So we had a huge debate, probably around the exec table, around exactly what you're talking about there. So I'm using ChatGPT, and a lot of it was around we can't allow this for security reasons. So where's the data going? Is it going to be publicly discoverable? So I guess we started off with lock it down and then try and work out how we open it up. We've now opened it up. Like I said, we've got some training on it. Yeah, it's interesting. Shadow IT, it's always going to exist. It's always going to happen. I'm not sure how you can stop it. People can always take some documents or sensitive information out of your environment and use it externally. The shadow IT, it's interesting. I've got a view on it. Shadow IT, if you kind of know about it, you can start educating and say, actually, you can have that. We're giving you that ability to use our version of ChatGPT, which effectively is just, our Fulton Hogan version, which kind of satisfies the security requirements. So we're giving you the tools to do it. The one I'm really worried about is, I think there's this new category called black IT. And the black IT to me is IT out there that you don't know about. So the shadow stuff you can kind of address, but yeah, it's all about education. That you don't know what you don't know out there. That's the part that's kind of scary. Probably some of that AI, people using AI capabilities falls into that black IT because you don't know about it, so you can't address it. So
there's an interesting approach to that. So we saw a mining organisation in Australia, straight out of the gate, they could see that people were using ChatGPT. You can see it through where people are making calls to various websites. And so they used the approach that Ed used in his presentation, the top down, bottom up. They were like, all right, have at it. Just use ChatGPT. We're going to wear the risk that none of our proprietary information is actually going to end up out there. But you have to tell us what you're using it for, so we can build you the most powerful, one app to rule them all. And so they tried to get around that shadow IT piece, that instead of people using it in the shadows, they could use it openly, but they had to share what they were using it for, so they could actually build a corporate enterprise application off the back of it.
Yeah, and we've got bits now where it sort of comes up with a disclaimer, sort of saying, okay, make sure you refer to your training, look out for hallucination, and then we put those little disclaimers down at the bottom saying part of this email or part of this document's been generated by AI. So being kind of open about it and going, you know what, I've used some AI technologies to generate this document, but I've also gone through and applied the critical thinking. Because the other thing that kind of scares a lot of people is if someone doesn't review that document that's been generated by AI, and then that gets submitted, if we think of the extreme case, it's a safety plan, and then that gets submitted as part of our tender, and we implement that safety plan and someone gets injured, then, because someone hasn't critically reviewed it. So I guess there's a whole lot of training around, yes, use it, but it doesn't abstain you from the responsibility of going through and just checking it. So.
And does that, Ed, speak to what needs to be in the policy and the training, that it isn't just about putting your great prompts into AI and getting it to spit out the safety plan or whatever it is that the business requires, but being able to apply your own human brain to what it provides?
Yeah, I think that's a big part of the training, is that at the end of the day, just like with all the other tools that you use at work, you are ultimately responsible for your output. And you could use Google as well. You could get a lot of disinformation from Google and you could put that into charts and stuff and it would all be wrong. But if you submitted that, you would be dinged for it if someone found out. So it's no different, really. It's just that the expectation from new users and novices is that they can type anything they want into the AI and it'll give them a correct answer. And so there's training there around expectations of what the AI can do and what your responsibility is as a user to validate the output.
And I think it's interesting because I think when you put the question into Google and you get the response back, it's a Google search. When you're using AI, that second word, intelligence, you go, it's intelligence, so therefore it must be right. So, yeah, I think you've got to be probably a bit guarded, and I kind of agree with you. You're still responsible and accountable for what you're producing.
Yeah, I think you're building a muscle though, right? Which is, we had to build it around cybersecurity. We don't click the links anymore, do we? We don't believe those texts saying we've won $1 million. Like, we had to build that.
Always.
Not always. Okay, please don't click the link. But we do that as corporate training. We do that cybersecurity training. And I heard a wonderful use case yesterday where an organisation gives their people AI driver's licenses, and it can be revoked, so then you won't be allowed to use the AI tools any longer. But what they do is they inject hallucinations deliberately into some of the responses, and if you don't say, hey, boo, this is actually wrong, that's one of those marks that get black mark against your license.
You get a speeding ticket?
So, yeah, exactly, speeding ticket.
Yeah.
But I just think it's a really interesting concept. It helps you build that muscle of critical thinking on everything that you're getting back. A bit like every email I get, I know sometimes Microsoft tries to phish me to see if I'm testing. Like, it's the same concept. Like, hallucinations injected into the responses to force you to always critically review them before you use that content.
If you look at organizations, the maturity of an organization with AI, you just have to start at some point. But if a company's been using generative AI in these kinds of tools for, let's say, 6 months, then at the end of the 6 months, generally, there's kind of an understanding and a maturity and a knowledge of how to use that tool, right? So, but you have to start at some point. You have to start somewhere. And there is a learning curve. That's all there is to it. And so people will need to be trained. They'll need to get a feel for it. And then after that, they'll have a feel for it. And they'll be ahead of those companies that don't have a feel for it and have to go through the training. So start now,
Well, theoretically, and I'm sure this is the case, Microsoft must be one of the most mature when it comes to the adoption and introduction of AI. So what does that look like within your organization? Like, is it the wide approach where everyone's just implementing some level of AI, everyone's getting the driver's license and using it to work smarter?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, we wanted to be, we talk about being customer zero. We wanted to be the flagship for AI, and so everybody has Copilot plus a whole range of other AI tools. But we actually still run models a bit like Ed was talking about with that bottom-up piece. So we will do ideation sessions internally with our own teams. So the legal team did it recently, 250 different ideas of how AI could improve the way they provide the legal services internally and externally. And then we take that and we filter them down and turn those into the next use case that we deploy. One of our biggest users of AI in Microsoft is our finance team. And they have been for a long time. They've been on this amazing journey for the last decade of how they actually revolutionize their entire operations, but they use it for absolutely everything now, and they were the fastest adopters of Copilot across the organization, which is a bit strange given we are a tech org and people love it, but yeah, finance, they were the fastest kids out of the gate internally.
Can you talk to me about Copilot? If we're talking about investment and cost reduction, how does Copilot achieve a return on investment? What does it do for me? And is it just if I'm a desk-based employee dealing with lots of emails?
Oh, that's a great question. I think this is the thing we've come to the realization of, is that benefits aren't realized evenly across an organization. So everybody at Microsoft has Copilot, but not everyone's going to get the same level of benefit out of it. And actually those administrative roles will get a much higher level of benefit than perhaps an executive team. And the reason is that if you have repetitive tasks or if there is routine to what you do, then Copilot is incredibly powerful. But if you have to do really varied things, like today I'm talking about AI, yesterday I was talking about quantum, like my job is so varied that it doesn't have the same level of benefit to me. It's a great brainstorming partner. I love it deeply. My favorite colleague, it's always there for me.
It doesn't call in sick.
But I think it's really important for organizations to be aware of that not every role in your organization will realize the same level of benefit from these tools, but all of them will realize some benefit. And it is often, I can catch up on meetings faster, I can catch up on email. So what admin can I offload to the AI to enable me to focus on those higher value activities?
If we're talking about disrupting ourselves, lest we become a Kodak or a BlackBerry and we're disrupted by somebody else, how do you create that culture within the organisation? Are we setting up some kind of committee that's always looking for ways to do things smarter, or pivots we can take? Or is it we just got the exec team looking for opportunities out there? How does it work at Zespri?
Education and almost creating a movement around AI is the approach we're taking. So we're certainly encouraging the use of AI. We do have policies, and we want to make the tools available to our staff to use safely internally and encourage that use. So for instance, we rolled Copilot out to half our organisation over the last 3 months. We started with a pilot of 30 to drive a business case, and the use cases that we got across the board were just so inspiring, and everyone was wanting to get into Copilot. Please give me a license. I'm almost receiving bribes every day. How do I get to the top of the list? And
you'll be interested to know that someone earlier today described it as the silver bullet. So that's why everyone's queuing up.
And look, what we've found is that it is getting people to that first draft for anything. A spreadsheet, a Word document, summarising, as you said, really, really fast. We've had instances of people reducing what would have taken them a week's worth of effort without Copilot to reducing that down to an hour through the summarisation of research documents and so on. So we've created a forum, if you like, that's got key leaders globally across our organisation that are coming together to work out prioritisation of ideas and ideating. But for everyone that's got access to the tools, we've got a centralised team chat, and we're encouraging everyone to share. And we're following traditional change management sort of approaches for any technology rollout, so educating, encouraging, giving feedback, and making sure that everyone gets the benefit of the knowledge that anyone's gained across the organisation. And it really does. It does create that movement.
So even though the technology is moving at pace, those kind of principles of change management, what you're saying is they remain the same?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. Doesn't matter what it is. You've got to educate people. They've got to understand how to do it safely. What are the risks of shadow IT? And how can you do what you want to do in the shadow IT safely in our organisation? But absolutely, it's about how do we make sure that all our colleagues can get the benefit of the productivity gains that you're getting out of your prompts. I mean, we've rolled out a prompt buddy to really improve prompting.
So is that a prompt that's quite specific to your industry, or is it just the principles of prompting?
Principles of prompting,
right?
Yeah. So that you get the best bang for your buck. By and large, we're using off-the-shelf AI like Microsoft Copilot. We are doing some specific stuff that we're building ourselves that is unique to our industry. For example, we're about to release in December to all our growers. We've got a knowledge portal for our growers. There's about 3 very, very large manuals that they have available to them around use of pesticides, sprays, how to grow well, yield, all that sort of thing.
That's what I was going to ask you, because obviously your business model is as a grower cooperative, right? So you can be doing fantastic tech AI stuff at a head office level, but how does that filter down to those that are actually producing the product that you're taking to market?
Yeah, and look, and growers own us and control us, so they get the benefit out of the investment as well. So far, what we've demonstrated them has been well received, so we'll see how we go with the rollout in December. But that's going to save them a heap of time, because it'll take them exactly to the location in the manual that they've searched, to the citations, which you just couldn't do pre this generative AI technology. We do a lot of innovation around plant variety development and new varieties of kiwi fruit. We have years and years of documents and research. We're putting a chatbot over that, and we're saving our innovation team hours of time in looking up historical research information. Same in marketing, market research information. We're trialling with an agency in Asia, an ad agency that we use in Asia, creating our content with AI, with a view that it makes them more efficient and we should get a reduced cost in their services as a result. Or potentially we can insource that capability now instead of outsourcing it, because we can do it cheaper ourselves. So, it's just looking for all those simple things that we can do quickly now, while still trying to invest in the long game, the transformation program, but some of those bigger data sets that you can really, what I would call fuel your imagination with data and AI in your business processes. Our fruit quality is really important to us, so getting all that data together and looking, can we predict fruit quality in the future, those sorts of things.
It sort of sounds like there's no part of the organisation that's untouched, that this is not about tacking on, a plug-in or a bolt-on. It is about changing the way everything works all at once.
It is. It cuts across the entire organisation. There's benefits for everyone, even the board. Even the board of directors. We all have board meetings. There are big packs that go to the board. They can summarise. You can model being a director. So as an exec team, we can ask questions of the board pack as if you were a director and say, what if I was a company director, what sort of questions would I ask out of this current board meeting pack? So, you can prepare yourself better for board meetings.
Yeah, and I did hear of one application that you could take a whole bunch of information that you need to learn and take on board and almost turn it into a podcast and then listen to it like...
You've just hit my favourite use case.
Really?
Well, it's actually a New Zealand customer. So Vista, cinema operators, have done exactly this for their data. So their cinema operators every morning log into a dashboard and look at how much popcorn did we sell last night, how many seats do we sell, what's the next big blockbuster. They've turned it into generative AI podcasts that are personalised for every single one of those operators. And I love it because it's such a simple use case but so powerful in that it transforms the way those people interact with that information. So I'm driving into the office, I listen to my podcast, I already know everything I need to know before I walk through the door. No more dashboards where I'm trawling through trying to find the information. So I love that podcast piece as a use case. It's just so powerful. It's a great one.
Is that like listening to robotic sounding voices, or are these very realistic,
they're so
realistic hosts that have turned it into some kind of interesting conversation that that's rapidly absorbable?
18 months ago it would have been a little bit more robotic. Now it's so realistic, it's really easy to listen to. In a lot of the systems you can choose the kind of voice you listen to. It's fabulous. So I think we always get caught up in those really big, let's find the really big use case, but actually you've probably heard two of the best ones here, and they're both New Zealand ones, and I talk about them all the time. I love the Zespri one. 3 documents, it's like the most powerful thing ever. Start simple but powerfully. 3 documents that fundamentally change the business and how people interact with it, or a podcast on the data you already have. It's so good.
And another nice easy one for us that we're looking at rolling out, video messaging for internal communications in your organisation. We're a global organisation. Our CEO may want to send out a video message. We can now just record him in video, write a separate script, combine the two, and it comes out beautifully with gestures.
He doesn't actually say those words.
No.
You just record him, and then you get this.
You record him saying anything, then you write a separate script, and you combine it, and you get a beautiful video as a result. But not only that, you can then do it in any language you like. So we can communicate it to our Italian team, we can communicate it to our Greater China team in their language.
So does the CE even know what they've said?
Oh yeah, they approve the script obviously and read the script.
Well, look, it saves a lot of presenter training and reading auto cues and all of those things, right?
It does.
Brian, I asked Dave the question about, whether we've got a separate team working on it, whether it's the exec level. What is it within Fulton Hogan that's driving your strategy in the adoption of AI?
Yeah, we've probably got a couple of different tacks. So we've actually set up a sort of a focus group, and we've made it across Australia and New Zealand, and we've gone across. We've got a number of sort of industry. We've got an infrastructure services, asphalt manufacturing, quarrying. So we've got representatives. It's a bigger group, but it's got from exec down to the guys and girls on the shovel. So we've got a cross-representative of the whole organisation and across our industries to come up with kind of ideas that are then prioritised. And it's interesting. It's always the small ones that kind of happen. So that's our first funnel, and a lot of those ideas actually aren't really driven from that exec level. They're driven from kind of middle and lower management, people on the tools. That's the first one. The second one we're doing is interesting. Ed talked about it. We're in IT, we've got to have an acronym. So we've got HIT teams, so high impact teams. So we're getting 3 people about to launch this, where we're embedding them into parts of our business to look for opportunities where we can use technologies and AI to drive efficiencies out of the business. So, and their responsibility, they're not going to have a day job, because at the moment, probably you look around here, we all run on the smell of an oily rag. There's always, cost cutting, and so putting something on top of someone's job, we have that kind of burnout. So we're trying to get these people that go into the business and look for these opportunities. So that's the second one we're doing, and then deliver on those. And they're not going to be able to deliver big, huge programs of work. They're going to be looking at targeted, specific areas. Maybe it's something as simple as how do we automate our docketing system, etc. So really targeted. And the third area we're getting is similar to what Zespri. We've got a Teams channel where people that are using our applications contribute and add, questions and comments and what they've found. And if we have it for our applications, like our ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning, Nadine. And
Thank you, I appreciate that. There's a lot of acronyms.
There's a lot of acronyms in this room, yeah. But a lot of those others, it's not really used. Interestingly, with AI, it's just flooded with, hey, I found this new way to prompt, and so there's a lot more kind of interaction around that. So, and the final thing is we have an IT monthly update, and in terms of innovation, we showcase the things that failed. So we go, oh, we tried this, bit of a disaster because of A, B, and C, but that's okay. We learned from it. This one worked. So I think that kind of embeds the culture, because we always talk about, it's okay to fail and fail fast, but until you actually kind of showcase it and go, and I front the first of them because it's usually my fault. Go, hey, let's try this one. And they go, well, it didn't work because of this. You idiot. Oh, yeah, sorry about that. So, but we showcase the failures as well and go, actually, we can learn something from it. So they're kind of the areas that we, target.
I asked Dave about, the depth in terms of, and the width of everyone in the organisation being touched by it. Is it a similar thing with Fulton Hogan? Like if you are on a site in a digger, are you also being onboarded to learn about how IT and AI is changing the way that they're going to operate in the future?
Yes, and it's really interesting. We're just doing, we're refreshing our strategy at the moment, and we've got a picture of someone 10 years ago working on a construction site. Got a hard hat, PPE, got a clipboard. And now we look at that same person. We've got the picture, the next slide is that same person. They've got an iPad, they've got a phone, they're in a digger which has got IoT sensors in it. There's alerts for what's happening behind them, so with thermo cameras to detect people, and the technology that's pervasive around our construction sites now is incredible. In the last I'd say it's in the last 5 to 7 years, and we talked with Sarah about it before, it's just this explosion. Usually it used to be, we're a quarry, we don't need technology. Now we've got drones, we've got digital twins, we've got IoT, we've got electronic timesheets and DJRs, and so yeah. So to answer your question, it is permeated right the way down, and this whole consumerisation of IT that we sort of talk about as well. People that are joining, and even if they're joining in roles which are kind of more manual roles, there's still an expectation that I have some kind of technology support. So yeah, we're seeing it right through the organisation.
Edmundo, I was wondering whether there's one of the risks with AI is that we get it to do more and more things for us, and so we cease to know how to do those things. It kind of makes us dumber. And a tiny example would be, I can't back my car now without surround cameras, I just don't know where anything is. And so, how do you see that in terms of the risks here? We're going to become fat and lazy in an intellectual sense because AI is doing it all for us?
Well, I have a specific use case that I think is maybe an example of this in action, right? Or the opposite of that. So we have a client who, they are a data company. They they read government documents. They have a team in India, 70 people, who meticulously look through these documents, pull out data points, and paste them into a schema, a known schema. It's awful work. I mean, even they hate it, right? And so when we talked to them at the beginning of the process, I was worried that we were going to go in and they were going to say, oh, these guys are going to come and take my job. But they were like, please take this job because I do not like doing it. If you could make it easier for me, like I would love that. And like, they just, I mean, their eyes are bleeding from this process, right? So we were able to basically turn them from data pluckers, copy and pasters, into validators. So now what they do is instead of reading manually through these 150-page documents, each document takes 6 person-hours to parse manually. Now it takes 1 minute and 30 seconds from the AI, and then the person, it takes them 30 minutes to go through and validate the data points with this process, okay? So their job got better. There's more of those people now to do analysis. So they have been upgraded because they've spent 10 years reading these documents. They know them really well. They know the content of the document. So a small part of that team has become validators, and a large part of that team has become data analysts for the parent company, right? Now, this has created a problem because in the US, there is another layer of analysts whose jobs just got stolen by those folks, right? Because they were the ones who used to do this. But these were recent MBA grads, and it was kind of a tedious job for them to do this basic analysis, so they didn't like it. But the problem is that that was also the bottom level of this ladder to get to partner in this company. So now they would bring in MBAs, and they wouldn't get that kind of in the trenches learning with the documents that they needed to gain that experience to then become effective as they climbed up. Well, as part of this tool, one aspect that was a chat app, kind of a co-pilot for the analyst. And so when new grads come on, they can interact with the chat app and kind of learn their job because the chat app knows everything about the data and how it's constructed and, you know, sort of the nature of the data, and they can actually ask questions and upskill themselves in basically like 1/3 the time that it used to take. So you'd have to put an MBA in the trenches for about a year to get them to be kind of a competent data analysis. Now it only takes about 3 months, 3 to 4 months, for them to get up to speed to that same level of competency. So, you know, it's not like a yes, no, black, white answer, but it's just the whole thing kind of shifts.
Does it matter that you can't reverse your car? Is
Well,
it safer?
it matters if I get into a car that doesn't have that technology in it, and then I feel unsafe.
But in a decade, there will be no vehicles left that don't have that in it. I think the question you should be asking yourselves is this the place for AI? And I say this so many times, just because we can doesn't mean we should.
Yeah.
So you've got to think about, where do you actually put it? Are you replacing a human in this process or taking a job? And does that matter in this moment? So humanity is such a critical piece in this. Like, where does the human matter? And we were talking out the back about the skills you need into the future, critical thinking and creativity. Like, so how do you make sure people have to exercise those muscles in what they're doing, and you don't default to this lazy thinking? Those are the things.
Which is, I suppose, what I was getting at, is if in an AI sense you feel like, it's fine, AI's got me, they're going to do that for me, do we cease to apply those critical thinking skills? Do we have a workforce that can put in a prompt and get an answer and put it to use, but not sense check whether that is appropriate, safe, applicable, whatever?
Which is why we always talk about a human in the loop. You want someone who's validating it, someone who's actually looking at that content. Like, some of the most powerful use cases are in healthcare. You know, AI can identify cancer much more effectively than the human eye can, and much earlier. So it's a great place, but you still want a person who's validating that and who's looking at it and is this actually a correct reading? Does this make sense in this moment? So it's, how do you bring the two together? And it's not either or. You have to have AI or a human. You have an AI and a human team working together.
We were talking earlier about education. I think that begs that question, like how this training on AI, we've been talking about it in a business sense, but to get those critical thinking skills, are we going to have to change our educational system with this new tool at play to help our kids be those critical thinkers and be creative in a way that they maybe didn't need to be so critically before?
Because we can't just ban the tool and then expect them to be able to critically analyze what it pumps out, right?
Yeah.
So that does prompt a whole rethinking of how education works.
Yeah.
There's a couple of questions here I'd just like to address, and this one might be for you, Sarah, and I think that this already exists, but let's talk about it. Tim said, has anyone tried to create a bot that attends meeting and takes notes for you?
It's called Teams? No. Yes, that actually exists. It does exist in Teams. It will take minutes for you in the meeting. The next iteration of it is even better. It acts as a team member, so it will actually task people and follow up after the meeting, which I just think is mind-blowing and amazing and slightly disturbing, but I need it because I always forget what actions I took. So yes, that already exists.
So my shorthand notes that I learnt to take at journalism school, completely redundant
What?
now.
No, and so this is the interesting thing. So AI will take the notes for you. I was talking about this with a colleague. I am an old school tactile learner. If I don't write something down, that is not in my brain. I have no idea. So I still take notes in those meetings. I use the Copilot notes for some depth, or maybe I missed something. But yeah,
Fill in the blanks.
I still write down notes because I want to absorb that information myself.
There's also a tool called Fireflies, just creative competitive landscape, which attends a meeting, takes notes, and you can prompt it ahead of time to say, when you take these notes, I want you to pay attention to these things. And so you can set up your own prompts, or you can say, after the meeting, I want you to analyze the meeting in this way to summarize it for me ahead of time. So I think this space is going to be really active in that way.
There is a question here from Richard. This is, I think, for you, Sarah, as well. If New Zealand is the third biggest adopter of AI worldwide, who's number 1 and 2?
You won't be surprised. China, straight out of the gate, and Singapore, the Asian countries. It's actually really interesting, this whole area of the world. When we started opening up provision throughput and generative AI, we could not get enough capacity in this area. We were outstripping the US. It's absolutely fascinating, but yeah, Asia.
I'm going to put you on the spot here because we've only got a couple of minutes left. If you could give one tip, hopefully limited to 30 seconds, to those in the audience about how to approach the AI progression in their organisation, what would it be?
I love the change piece that's been talked about. I think it gets overlooked a lot, and I think 80% of the things blocking organisations are people. It's change. So focus on the change and the people as you step into this moment.
Yeah, well, change it would have been for me, but also don't look for reasons why you can't do this stuff. Look for reasons why you can.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me it'd be choose something small and show the value of it, and get and bring your exec level along with it, and they will come along. So choose something small, and there's plenty of options.
Doesn't have to be like this, could be like this.
Yep, and
but
I have a huge
starting.
amount of benefit. Yep.
Ed?
I would say just one good use case. So if you're talking about organizationally, have one good use case where the personal productivity gets increased through this use case, and demonstrate that to the whole company. And when they see that, they'll be like, oh, okay, I'm inspired now to use something similar.
Well, that was fantastic. Please put your hands together for Ed, Brian, Dave, and Sarah.